The question on everybody's mind, I'm going to ask this to all three of you, is the disruptive part of Gen AI.
People have now started shifting from China to India. So this is a $200 billion global market.
Historically, India's grid has been designed to pick power from the east where most of the coal mines are and deliver the power to the west and the south where most of the factories run.
If you look at India's household breakup, the affluent and top three categories beyond 50 lakh income is expected to grow the fastest.
India still is scratching its surface on beyond banking financial services, whether it is equity investments, whether it is mutual funds, whether it is online banking.
There is an old saying that if you can't find your way to the sea, just follow the river.
Hello folks, I'm your host Anupam Gupta, and on today's episode of Bajaj Finserv Mutual Fund presents Megatrends Investing, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of megatrends. I'm thrilled to introduce our distinguished guests. Full panel today: Nimesh Chandan, CIO, Sorbh Gupta, Head of Equities, and Bharat Hegde, Senior Research Analyst, Megatrends from Bajaj Finserv Mutual Fund. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights with our audience.
Pleasure being here.
Thank you for inviting.
Great to have you here. Bharat, walk us through the time frame of megatrends and why that's important.
I think the 3 to 10 years time frame that we generally look at megatrends, that gives us a broader horizon, longer picture, and also helps us navigate beyond the short-term disruptions. I think good that you brought up this point because during COVID, we have seen a lot of disruptions. And over the past 2 years, there are global macroeconomic uncertainties, also Indian aspects. So looking at just 1 year or 2 year won't give you the exact idea of what a actual megatrend is and what is a short-term fad. So that's why we look at 3 to 5 years at least, and then 10 years. Some of these megatrends have much more to offer beyond 10 years, but 3 to 10 years is sweet spot to look at.
Yeah. So what makes a megatrend unfolding? Is there a process? Are there certain indicators? Is there a cycle? Can you just walk us through that, please?
So, to start with, just to add what Bharat was saying, it definitely starts with an idea and it evolves. And for us investors, it is very, very important that idea becomes profitable, cash generating, and companies start to benefit from it. And for the time frame, in fact, if I go back in history, the last big change in the vehicle market happened in 1900s, start of the 20th century, and it was the ICE, or the internal combustion engine, was 100-year megatrend, and that's now changing. So it could be 3, 5, 10, maybe 100.
I want to just talk a little bit in more detail about this 100-year megatrend, because the internal combustion engine replaced something. What was that like?
So if you go back in history, there was an interesting article in the New York Times which said that if the horse carts continue to move around in the city and the horse continues to leaves whatever it leaves when it moves around, the city will be in 10 feet of horse manure in next 10 years. That was a newspaper headline. But in fact, in the next 20 years, horse cars just vanished. The internal combustion engine just took it over. If you go outside now and maybe in BKC peak of the rush, you click a picture, it's a very similar scenario. You will hardly see 1 or 2 electric vehicles, and all around you will see the ICE engine vehicles right now. I'm sure in 10, 15 years, if there are no new disruptions coming in this, the picture will look very similar, where all around you will see electric vehicles and 1 or 2 ICE. That's the megatrend.
Fantastic. Let's get into the meat of the episode today. Top megatrends to watch for. Let's start there. I believe the first one is consumption.
As what we've seen is, this is from different countries, as per capita income moves beyond $2,500, you see people increasingly spending more on discretionary demands rather than their needs. So the premiumization aspect kind of picks up. If you look at India's household breakup, the affluent and top three categories beyond 50 lakh income is expected to grow the fastest. So this is what will drive premiumization. This is particularly evident in SUVs, where more than 50% of new cars being sold are SUVs. If you take example of iPhones, I mean, contrary to what people would presume, iPhone sales have hit around 12, 13 million per year in India. This is particularly higher per capita if you compare it with even with developing countries. Same was the trend in China, where iPhone sales were much beyond what people would have presumed looking at the per capita income. So I think we feel that premiumization is one aspect. This is across sectors. If you see, this is across auto sectors, this is across consumption, food, even healthcare for that matter. As you become more wealthy, as your income levels increase, you are able to spend. You are aware. You are able to spend. Those services are available in India, and then there are different aspects like health insurance, which again is another mega trend. So what we feel is consumption is at a right point. Just carrying on from your previous question, maybe right now it is not really taking off because of the COVID disruption, and that's why we take a longer horizon, 3 to 10 years. And we feel this is at the tipping point where it really takes off, and we are positive on consumption as a country.
Trend number 2, Sorbh. That's very interesting. Healthcare and wellness.
Continuing with Bharat's point, as the society prospers, it starts to take care of itself, both from a curative perspective and preventive perspective. As the affordability increases, people would like to take care of themselves in terms of going to better hospitals, taking better medicines, and taking care of themselves. This includes health insurance as well. So more percolation of health insurance also helps. That's the curative part of it. But the bigger emerging part is the preventive part of it in healthcare and wellness, the second part that you highlighted. Wellness is something, as the prosperity increases, one has more discretionary income, you will start to choose better products which you want to consume. That's wellness. Maybe move towards organic food, move towards freshly grown vegetables and fruits, move towards beyond packaged food. All those things are very big megatrends that are emerging around us. A lot of companies have identified these megatrends, and if you look at any online market or shops, there will always be a segment of these newer products which are now gaining shelf spaces. A lot of companies right now might have not a lot of revenues coming from there, but clearly a fast growing segment and clearly a megatrend.
Yeah. I see some overlap even in consumption and healthcare and wellness, because the market that you're talking about is also a slightly more premium market. Do you think that's the case, Bharat?
See, mega trends per se are not particularly aligned with any particular sector, right?
Okay.
So there would be energy transition which spans across different sector, AI impacting energy demand, and then transportation, electric vehicles impacting energy demand. So similarly on healthcare is not just one sector. Healthcare is comprised of 150 plus subsectors. You have hospitals, you have diagnostics, you have domestic pharma, you have export pharma, you have CDMO. So right now, as affordability increases, you on the one hand you have tailwinds for your domestic pharma consumption, hospital consumption, but we are seeing mega trends from the global perspective like CRDMO or the CDMO, which is generally known as, because of something called as Biosecure Act in US. Although this act was not passed, people have now started shifting from China to India. So this is a $200 billion global market where China was probably 25 billion, India was just 7 billion. India is supposed to be growing faster even without Biosecure Act. And now even without passing Biosecure Act, you see that companies are jittery giving contracts because you won't know after 5 years whether those companies would be allowed to export to US or not. So this is one particular mega trend in healthcare as a sector. But then where you see tailwinds from global regulatory environment. So that's why we see healthcare not as one particular sector. That's where the point comes in, as you want to see this as a mega trend and not just one sector. Because if you restrict yourself to one sector as a domestic pharma or domestic hospitals, then you are overlooking the bigger picture.
Nimesh, sorry, go on, please.
Yeah, I wanted to just add to what Bharat and Sorbh just said. What you find in, say, especially healthcare sector, and Bharat mentioned about the Biosecure Act, you're seeing 2-3 important mega trends coming together. The favorable demographics, the economic trend of increasing affordability, regulatory changes which are actually pushing some of the companies to source from countries other than China. So many of these, they come together to give a boost kind of or growth potential to some of the sectors within healthcare.
It just reminds me of, in fact, that's the point that I was going to get, Nimesh, that underlying the underlying framework of TRE and DS trends is what is driving these mega trends, right?
Yeah, and there are many overlaps also that can come. Like technology changes, and changes in the financial sector, you actually get digitization of financial services, and something that we are very positive on. Consumption is a combination of demographic changes, economic growth in per capita income, and the behavior of consumer to look
Yeah.
to premiumize, to move to better brands, to move to spend on wellness. So those coming together actually solidify that trend and make it last a little longer.
Yeah. In fact, there's one very fine aspect that probably the audience would not get was that we generally tend to assume that India's economic trajectory itself, is one big trend and basically every sector will benefit from that. But Bharat got out a very interesting point about how global factors, regulation, tariffs, whatever's happening in the global arena can also act as a tailwind to sectors. That's important, I would assume, right?
Yeah, so tariff, I would say, is a short-term disruptor rather than a trend, at least as of now, because we don't know how much tariff which country is going to pay. But what megatrends helps us is not just benefit from the domestic aspects, but also from the global aspects, like let's say global energy transition, where the market size of US and Europe, just US and Europe, in terms of transformer or distribution equipment or transmission lines, is much more than India. Although we benefit from domestic megatrends as well, but there's a larger energy transition global energy transition megatrend that is going on. So megatrends helps you take a top-down view, not just from the country perspective, but from a global perspective, and identify beneficiaries from the global perspective.
That was my mega trend number 3, which is energy. Can you just talk more about that, please?
We see energy transition that has already started maybe 5-10 years ago. Countries focusing on sustainability was the initial impetus which drove towards transitioning from traditional energy sources to green energy. But suddenly what has happened is because of AI, you see global energy demand rapidly increasing astronomically. Countries like US, which have seen probably last 10-15 years, their energy demands almost same, are now expected to grow at 2 to 3% CAGR for next 5 to 10 years.
Wow.
This demand is coming mostly for US, at least from data centers, which is 30 to 40% incremental demand from electrification of transportation, and for Europe it is mostly heating because data center is largely focused on US. So what we see is a larger energy transition demand, and to add on to that, you have aging grid in US. So the average grid age in US is about 40 years, same for Europe. And now there is a demand to rapidly improve or modernize their grid to be able to address these newer energy demands. So your interconnection queues in US are 5 years. Your transformation, large power transformer for HVDC, wait times are maybe 2 or 3 years, 200 weeks to be precise. You have energy sources like gas turbines being booked for 2030. There is a queue to get into the order book.
Wow.
And people are paying 20% of the order books for some companies are paid queue. So to get into an order book, you are in a queue. And some people are not ordering because they know that for 5 years they don't have visibility. So the tariff point that you brought out, there was a point where companies said that the demand for energy is so much, it doesn't matter. If the client is ready to pay extra amount, then there is no amount of power that would satiate this demand. And AI being the primary driver, like Saurabh pointed out, per Google query, ChatGPT query consumes 10 times more power. So we don't think that global energy demand is going down. To add on to that, we have our own internal demand in India. Power demand roughly mirrors GDP growth. And as manufacturing picks up more rapidly in India, you would see that power demand in India also growing beyond the GDP growth.
Just help me understand how the global energy situation benefits India. Sorry, I mean, I'm just a little bit. Are there any companies here that benefit from that? Is that what you're tracking, or any sectors?
So this is power equipment companies,
okay.
where the demand is so much that you need every subsidiary, every supplier to be manufacturing this, and still they are not able to fulfill the demand. That's why you see the cost of large power transformers has tripled. And why we insist on mega trends is because there's a perception that once ordering happens in India, okay, this trend is done now, or you see 1 month power generation growing at maybe 2%, and then you see that okay, energy demand is not there. But these are weather patterns which kind of influence in the short term. But rather than focusing just on domestic demand, if we are able to focus on the global demand, then your catchment becomes much larger.
I was thinking that that when you say energy transition, you're going to talk about Saurabh's example of electric vehicles. Is that also a mega trend? I mean, is that also unfolding, or where do you think that is?
Sure, definitely. So incrementally, whatever development takes us to, it's one thing is most important, that it consumes more power. One more thing that I want to highlight, what Bharat was saying, that when we look at megatrends, very often people stop at one level. For example, let's look at the megatrend nature, wherein we have renewables. When we look at renewables, people will generally stop at maybe solar voltaic cells or windmill manufacturers. But look at an Indian context. When we as a country move towards natural sources of energy, historically India's grid has been designed to pick power from the east, where most of the coal mines are, and deliver the power to the west and the south, where most of the factories run in India. Now, as we move towards renewables, your windmills and solar parks are situated in Rajasthan, in Gujarat, and maybe Ladakh.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do in the second layer is that you need to redesign the whole grid. That is a certain level of capex that the government has to do. That is creating the second level of opportunities or megatrends for power equipment, which Bharat was talking about. So each megatrend has multiple levels. Maybe the first level, it's done. Maybe it's still captured in the stock prices, but maybe not the second level or the third level, how it starts to influence everything.
I wanted to, just go into the next mega trend, which is, it's my personal favorite because it's seen so much of, it's transformed the way India does payments, which is financialization and digitization. Let's talk about that.
So clearly, if I talk about banking or financial services as megatrend, people might find it boring. That it's been a long story, private banks taking market share, or maybe online or internet banking is here for 20 years. But as you rightly said, this is changing very, very fast. Mobile payments, especially UPI, has transformed. While still not profitable, UPI, you can't make money, but it has implications on a lot other things as digital payments. The bank balances have gone down, or the regulatory aspects improve because every transaction is now recorded. So it has multifaceted things that is changing on the financial services. India still is scratching its surface on beyond banking financial services, whether it is equity investments, whether it is mutual funds, whether it is online banking, all of those things have to percolate beyond 8-10% of the population. So huge opportunity on megatrends on these aspects, which we are looking very closely, including the insurance part as well.
So on financialization and digitalization as a mega trend, what I think yesterday or just last week, we saw that UPI has crossed Visa with 650 million daily transactions, right? So what we see is incrementally, even on this large base, every month on month, we are seeing UPI gain that amount of market share from other sources, or mainly cash. So what this has happened, initially what you saw is this digitalization helped a lot of fintech startups cater to the unbanked. But as this was fueled by liquidity during COVID, obviously, but as regulation caught on, you saw those startups kind of feeling the pressures of your investors. But at the same time, what we saw was the banks, your traditional banks, who are able to cater to this and who are able to address this demand, were the ones where your new customers went to, and they were the ones you have. And then data is your new oil. So you, with armed with this data from your banks, you could cross sell them many more products. So you see, the banks which we see currently are essentially your fintech companies under a new garb, right? So that's why, and what we feel is any bank which can deliver on this aspect well is poised to do better in the long run.
Yeah, very interesting. I think the last one that we've got would be Gen AI. I think you just talk to us about that, please.
So Gen AI, interestingly, you'll have to see AI in general and neural networks was what enabled Gen AI, right? So we have been studying from colleges. But what has really happened is the cost of compute going down. This has enabled the number of parameters to be processed in Gen AI. So right now we see Gen AI disrupting a lot of industries, your traditional media industry, maybe your consumer services like chatbots. So this is a mega trend which spans across, right? You see sectors, you see pharma companies probably bringing drugs sooner to the market, and then that's a whole lot of tailwind for that sector as well. So Gen AI right now is generally a buzzword and maybe mostly in private sector rather than public markets, and mostly US is the winner because of ChatGPT and Google and all those companies working. You have large hyperscalers spending $400 billion of capex. You have Stargate announcement of $500 billion. But what we feel is it is a bit early for the commercial markets. There are certainly some winners in US. You know them very well. But most of the money is to be made in the application layer, and once the application you start delivering, because right now investors are funding consumers in India, right? So this has to, otherwise all these billions or trillions of dollars of investments are of no use. So once this moves from model layer to the application layer, you'll start more software companies being benefited. I think we are already seeing from commentaries of some software companies in US that the tailwinds that they are seeing, and then you'll also have IT services companies which will benefit. So this will come. I think we'll have to watch for the time. That's why it's a mega trend and not a trend or a fad. But I think this is for here to say, and there are companies, whoever can benefit. It's like a level playing field now.
The question on everybody's minds, I'm going to ask this to all three of you, is the disruptive part of Gen AI. There's going to be a lot of people who will probably lose from Gen AI. What do you gentlemen think about that?
I think, whenever there's a new technology, I think there is a lot of uncertainty, and what we feel or what experts feel all over is it will change the nature of how you do business. The same person might not be doing the same job he or she was doing, but maybe deliver it in a different way, in a more efficient way. So that person would have, right now the belief is that there will be efficiency gains. How these efficiency gains will be utilized by the companies is to be seen. Whenever there's a new technology, I think Saurabh touched on that point of DeepSeek, right? When there was so much of uncertainty on one particular day. But you see, Satya Nadella's tweet that day was about Jevons paradox, right? Whenever the cost of compute goes down, you see more people using that. So I would say I would like to bring this point. You would not have seen the price of laptops really declining, but you see the compute power which they offer is going up, right? So this is an anecdotal example of how technology would change. I think it is disruptive in the way you do business. The same person might not get disrupted unless you fail to upskill. But I think you need to, companies or businesses need to adapt to the changing environment. I think many of them, from their commentaries from India, we are clearly able to make out that they are on the right path.
So, what should investors focus on today? Really, from all from the discussions that we've been doing so far, we've analyzed in deep 5 mega trends, spoke about them. What should investors do today?
Investors need to look at these opportunities and go beyond the obvious, beyond what obviously looks at the nature example that I gave you, that renewables is not the only sustainable play. It's the power grid systems which will change because of that. And electric vehicle is not just battery replaced by the ICE engine replaced by, this is a whole new car. So a lot of things will change around us, which each change or each mega trends. I think the investors need to look beyond obvious, look at opportunities at second order derivatives or third order derivatives of those megatrends. That's the reason these are megatrends. I think creating a robust portfolio across these 5 megatrends, having a longer term approach, and as I in the previous talk, as I talked about, that buy and watch, not buy and hold. Have a long term approach, but keep reviewing these megatrends. Have a longer term view and try to buy the stocks at the price where you are comfortable with, and don't pay for the hype but pay for the earning cycle. All these things put together, you can create a very robust diversified portfolio across megatrends, which can yield you very good returns as an investor.
As a CIO, your message to the audience, to unit holders, everybody, wealth generation through trend alignment.
There is an old saying that if you can't find your way to the sea, just follow the river. if you're focused on businesses, finding businesses that are going to be one of the big businesses or growing faster in the longer term, then just follow megatrends. I think that's the message we want to give. In the episodes that we spoke about, we've analyzed every aspect of megatrends investing, and it is something that a true long-term active investor cannot ignore while forecasting. So this is a important tool, an important way of doing a top-down analysis as well as a bottom-up analysis to arrive at potential future winners.
My last question is to Bharat. Bharat, as someone who does this the entire day and probably even outside of that, I'm sure because this stuff is so interesting, why does staying ahead of the curve also means you have to be curious?
Like Nimesh mentioned earlier, mega trends can come from anywhere, right? Mostly we have an indication that they are global, but mega trends over a longer period of time, they have their ups and downs. So if I have to give you an example of electric vehicle, right now might not be right time if you look at the sector, and there might be questions around the sector. But you have to do your homework. You have to be curious. You have to learn. You have to see where the technology is at. You have to see what are the regulatory environments. You have to see what are the other second order, third order aspects, like Saurabh mentioned. And you have to be continuously on the hunt to monitor the current megatrends and also the future megatrends. Because right now, whatever the current megatrends are, they might also get disrupted, right? And there might be new megatrends emerging both globally and locally. So you have to be curious just to maintain the pace with current megatrends and find out new megatrends.
And on that note of staying curious, that is a wrap on this episode. My guests were Nimesh Chandan, CIO at Bajaj Finserv Mutual Fund, Sorbh Gupta, Head of Equities, and Bharat Hegde, Senior Research Analyst, Megatrends. Nimesh, Saurabh, Bharat, thank you so much for your valuable insights for our audience. This was a fascinating discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risk. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.